Welcome to the Mixology Talk podcast. I'm Chris.
And I'm Julia, and we're the folks behind barabove.com, the ultimate resource for craft bartenders, bar operators, and other people who like drinks.
Yep. So I'm a bar consultant with over 15 years of hospitality experience.
And I run a Bar Above, where we write fantastic, if I do say myself, articles every Monday. We post delicious cocktails on Instagram and Facebook and all that good stuff every Thursday, and every other week we bring you this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is episode number 136, and this week we're talking about building systems for your bar program. Now, you might have already stopped the episode and given up because you think that this episode is all about, well, that might be right, but we're not sure yet. We're just starting. But you might have dismissed this as a topic that's only focused on management, bar leaders, owners, lead bartenders, that kind of thing. But I beg to differ. What this episode is really about is looking for opportunities to help your bar run more smoothly, whether it's just the piece that you own as a manager on your shift, or if you own the whole place. If you're the owner of the operation, there's opportunities for you as well. So that's what we're going to be talking about this week, is digging into systems and that you can implement behind your bar to help things run more smoothly.
So to start this episode off, when we talk about systems, what exactly are we talking about?
So obviously the word systems is up to anybody's interpretation, but my interpretation is, in its most basic sense, a system is a repeatable way of doing something. It's the opposite of making it up as you go.
Ooh, I'm good at that.
I know, you're fantastic at that. So as you can imagine, being a better, faster, more skilled bartender requires quite a bit of this. You may not even realize that you're already doing this.
Right.
But especially as you look for things like consistency in your bar program, doing things the same way every single time, i.e. a system, is a good thing. I think also systems are, as you start to move up in your career behind the bar, systems also become important as a prerequisite to delegation.
Yeah, and I think this is a really important thing. This is something that I think a lot of new managers kind of struggle with, is this ability to be skillful at delegation and get people on board. I think it's a really critical thing that new managers and new bar leaders have to develop. And just like anything else, just like shaking cocktails, just like managing large crowds of people, it's a skill set that just needs to be worked on and developed and exercised, just like anything. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. Systems from bar level all the way up to management,
right,
and stuff in between. And I didn't really understand, when we were talking about this idea of systems in a podcast, I was like, bartenders don't really use a lot of systems, and we were totally wrong. There's a lot of systems we use on a daily basis.
Once we started talking through it, I think, well, it also depends on your definition of systems. If you think of a system as like a Rube Goldberg machine, then not so much, right? I think a lot of people think of systems in the context of management, like how do we do our inventory management? How do we do these big complicated systems? But it doesn't have to be that complicated. I think there's a lot of little things that you probably already do every day that are absolutely systems and that are ways that help you run your shift a little bit better, and there's opportunities for lots more.
I'm excited.
Me too. As a bartender, you probably already use a bunch of systems without even realizing it. For example, when I was talking to Chris, a perfect example would be, if I set this bottle in this location, I am telling the bar back without telling them that it needs to be refilled, or I need you to go to the stock room for it, right? That would be a good example.
That's a fantastic example. Like I said, I didn't realize how many systems we had in place until we started talking about this episode. I was like, oh yeah, I guess that's a system. Oh yeah, I guess that's a system. So there's a ton of systems that we do naturally as bartenders, during the shift, that we could really expand upon and like start to thinking about other systems we can implement. The one that Julia mentioned was, if you're running low on Grey Goose and you put it on the pickup window in a very specific spot, all of a sudden your bar back knows, okay, next time I go to the liquor room, I have to pick up a thing of Grey Goose so I can replace the one that they just poured through. And on the flip side of that, if I need something urgent, then I stop them and I say, hey, I need this on the fly. He knows, they know.
Yeah.
I need to stop everything I'm doing, and I need to get this product immediately before anything else. So that's kind of one of the systems that we developed behind our bar. But there's a lot of other ones too. For me, I had two different gears that I would go through when I was tending bar. If it was low and, kind of not a lot of customers in front of me, I could do a little bit more finessing. I'd talk to people a little bit more. But when I was in the weeds and I was at full steam, I kind of went into another gear. And this is where the systems of tending bar really kind of fell into place.
Yeah.
So imagine you have 10 spots in front of your bar. I went through what I called the typewriter method of going from A to B to C to D to E, and I would fill orders all the way through and then go back to A and B, because then you would have this constant turnover of customers, and people wouldn't be waiting a long time. But the other thing I did was I had a routine where I would take your order when I went. So I would address you, say, hey, how you doing? This, that, and the other. I would already have your order. I would hand the menu to the person behind you. I would turn around, fill your order, put all the things in a POS system, run a credit card from the previous guy. So I had this like 3-step process,
Like a
4-step
dance?
process.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I had. That was just my system of getting through people. And it worked for me. And I'm sure every bartender has some system like that.
And it's probably different for every bartender. This is a perfect example of something that you can do. You figure out what works for you.
Right.
It doesn't have to be the same as everybody else in your bar. It doesn't have to be the same as anybody else in your bar. But it still works for you and helps your job be a little bit easier.
Right. And at the end of the day, the reason I did it was it kept me in control. I didn't have to remember a billion things I was doing all at once, and I could really focus on just the process. And once I developed it, every day or once a week, I would go through and all right, is there an opportunity to kind of improve this process?
Right.
And think about different things, like I'm going to try that this week and I'm going to try this week. And it gives you an opportunity to kind of experiment, and that's where I kind of finally landed. I'm sure I still would have been trying new processes
I'm sure.
if I was behind the bar, but that's a big one for me.
Another one you mentioned to me was keeping track of which transactions had the tips entered in the system or not.
Right, exactly.
I mean, it was just like 2 piles, right?
Pretty much, yeah, exactly.
Seems really basic, but it's actually really helpful, because let's pretend that you, God forbid, cut yourself.
Right.
And suddenly you're bleeding and you need to go. Well, because you have a system in place, you can literally say to the other bartender, like, hey, those have been entered, those haven't. I'm bleeding. I gotta go.
Right, exactly. And ideally what would happen is the bar team's on the same page, so you don't even have to communicate it.
That's
I think
true.
it's one of the biggest parts of systems is your ability to communicate information without having to talk. I think we'll touch upon that a little bit later.
Yeah.
But, if you have 2 piles, one's in a specific place, that means I'm telling everybody these tips have not been entered because I'm in the weeds, and we'll get to these when things are slowing down, because it's not a priority when you're 4 deep.
Right.
You can do this later. So that way, if there's a batch that are already entered, we don't have to think about it and have to duplicate our work.
You don't have to trust your memory either.
Right.
I mean, you're 4 deep. The last thing you need to remember is which transaction you've already processed.
Right. Yeah, and there's a ton of benefit, and there's so many different examples of different systems that we use. Dirty glasses go in a specific place. The stuff in the dishwasher needs to be polished before it gets into rotation. What's the other one? Hot glasses in back, or hot glasses on the left. So that way, when you go into the fridge to fill an order, the bartender knows everything on the right's cold, everything on the left is hot. And
You
then
don't
just
have to
rotate,
go like, no,
rotate.
no,
Exactly.
no.
So we're surrounded by systems on a day-to-day basis. And I didn't really think about it until Julie was like, oh no, talk to me about your day.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, yeah, I guess that's a system.
I guess there's
that's
a lot
system.
of
I
them.
guess
Yeah,
that's a system.
exactly. And all of these are great opportunities, and I just love hearing these stories because everybody has these, whether or not you realize it. So we've talked a little bit about some example systems. I think we touched briefly upon the benefits of systems. So again, you have less to remember, which again, you have enough to remember as it is. So remembering the specifics of each of these systems, you don't have to do. It's easier to hand off something if necessary, if you cut yourself, for example. And it reduces the probability of mistakes.
Yeah.
Because, again, relying on your memory introduces the likelihood of mistakes. So having a system in place will reduce that probability. So, okay, what's next? Let's say you're taking a look at your own shift and you're looking for opportunities to implement systems. Where do you go from here? I mean, I would start with ask around, watch the other people at your bar and see what systems are working for them. because they already work there.
Right, absolutely.
Especially somebody who's more senior, who's been there for a while, who seems to have their process down. Somebody who just, you cannot explain why they are so much faster than you.
Mm-hmm.
Watch closely. Like, stick around after your shift. Take a look at what they're doing and ask them, like,
Right.
why did you put that there? Oh, that makes so much sense.
Right. Yeah. Physical location behind the bar is such a big thing. And, just knowing where things are without having to look for them, it makes all the difference in speed. If I know I can drop my hand and all of a sudden I'm on my simple syrup or my lemon juice, or, these two hands are, perfectly situated so I can do a Manhattan, for example, bourbon on one side, vermouth on the other. These are the systems that I really like, just knowing where things are at. We talked about one of them, and that was the system I used for remembering long orders.
Oh, yeah.
So the system that I worked on, or that helped me a lot when, doing a complicated order, taking 3 orders in your head at once, is you look at your well, and your well has a very specific sequence of spirits in it: vodka, gin, rum, tequila, whatever yours looks like. It's probably in the same every single time. But lining up my glassware in line with that specific spirit. So if I have a Grey Goose martini or a vodka martini, it's in line with my house vodka. If I have a gin gimlet or something, it's in line with my gin, and the glassware plus where it is in a position of my spirit was pretty much all the cues I needed. If I forgot something, like, oh yeah, that's right, I need to make this cocktail because it's in line with this, and that's all the mental.
Just the base spirit was enough to remember.
Right, that in combination with the glassware, it's usually 80% of what you need to figure out.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. That's a great little memory trick.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or system. So that's what I would start with. I would start with, if you're looking for ways to get faster, look around.
Right.
Look at the people around you. Go to other bars, see what best practices that other people are doing in other similar bars is another great suggestion. But you can always make up your own solutions, right? Take a look at your own shift and just look back on the week behind you and say, like, what's something I keep forgetting?
Yeah.
What's something that, a mistake that keeps happening, even though I'm trying to remember better? Well, maybe it's time to not rely on your memory anymore. So once you think about some opportunity for something that you can systemize? Is it systemize or systematize?
I don't know.
Systematize?
No idea.
We're going to use them both.
Yeah.
Because we live dangerously.
Correctly and incorrectly.
Maybe it's one of those words where they're both right. I don't know. Turn into systems. Haha.
There you go.
Yeah. So once you have a hypothesis of a thing that you can improve, then I would say the first thing I would look for is, can you use a visual cue or a physical location to solve the problem that you're previously solving by your memory?
Right.
For example, can you just if I have a pile of things and I can't remember which transactions I've entered the tips for, can I use a different physical location for them?
Right.
If I keep misplacing credit cards, can I just decide, no, they always go here?
Right.
Something like that. Just, again, physical location is so powerful. The human mind is incredibly good at remembering location, so much better than remembering
formulas or long drawn out things.
Abstract concepts,
Right.
or if I've got 10 credit cards and I got to remember where I put each one. That's 10 locations to remember instead of just remembering one. So that's what I would say is next. Can you find a visual cue or a physical location that will help you remember? Again, use the physical location of the glassware and the visual cue of which glassware.
Right.
And those two things together solved all your problems. It was able to jog your memory and get you there.
Right, absolutely. And I'm sure one process that a lot of bartenders may be struggling with now is, if you work in a restaurant, transfers. So transfers between the bar and the table or the waiters, that can be a huge complicated ordeal. So figuring out a system around that can be really powerful and make you more money at the end of the day too.
Absolutely. Yeah, mistakes are usually costly.
Yeah.
So I would say that's what I would look for, and then just test. I think the other thing about systems is to embrace the scientific method, right? I have a hypothesis that I will get better results by doing it this way, X, Y, and Z. I'm going to try that for a week, and I'm going to see if I got better results.
Right.
And if it's better, great, do that, and maybe continue to tweak and alter and look for other opportunities. But be nice to yourself, be gentle with yourself. You're trying something new. It's not going to be perfect every time. It's
Right.
going to take some time to learn. It's going to take some time for you to even remember your systems. That's okay.
Right.
But just, I would say, go about it in a playful way. Like, look for opportunities to do things better, but be gentle with yourself if it's not perfect every time.
Right, and only try one system at a time. I think,
Yes.
trying to implement too many systems at once is not effective. Focus on doing one thing good and getting it part of your routine, and then you can move on, either improve that system or move on to a new system, something that's really kind of bothering you,
Right.
trying to find out a solution. So I think that's the other thing.
Yeah, otherwise, again, you're asking your memory to do too many things at
Right.
once. Like, no, look, do it, implement a new system, make sure it works, and then, like, really get it, turn it into muscle memory, then do something new.
Right.
So we talked a little bit about the systems that you as a bartender kind of own because they're only really influenced by you. Great, wonderful. Well, there's a lot of other systems that are better served if the whole team is on the same page.
Yeah.
And I think this is we're starting to get to the things that people normally think about when they think of systems. We touched upon one, which is sort of an agreement between the bartender and the bar back on what a bottle being in this location means. But I think if you start thinking about things like the mise en place, like, it is way more efficient if the whole bar, if all bartenders have the same mise en place. Well, how do you get there from here
Right.
if you're not doing that already? I think that's a really good question. So, as a bartender, how do you implement systems when you're not actually in charge of anybody?
Yeah, the short answer is
You don't. Don't think of it that way. Don't think of yourself as being like, I am going to influence these people, because it's not going to work.
Right.
What you need to do is think of it as you are going to work with your peers to
Find a solution to the problem that pisses you off on a daily basis.
exactly like
Yeah.
it's a we, not an I guess is the point that I'm trying to make. Everybody's got to be on board or it ain't gonna happen unless you actually own the place and you are in charge, in which case you can probably use your
Position and authority to implement
you can do
that.
that, but you may not have authority, and that doesn't mean that you can't make things better. And I think that's the key thing that we wanted to talk about here. So how would you go about improving? I know you've done this 100 times. You've had this problem behind the bar. I'm sure every bartender does.
Yeah.
So let's say you have identified a thing that drives you crazy. Where do you go from there?
I think the first thing is identifying that problem.
Yes.
This is something that's going to happen organically behind the bar. Is at the end of the shift, you guys are going to look at each other. If you're working with a couple different people or just another person, you're going to look at yourselves and say, that sucked. Why does this keep happening to us? And then you can start to spitball ideas and say,
Yeah.
all right, next time we work together, let's try this, let's try that, let's try this. So I think organically those conversations are going to happen. And this is a perfect opportunity to start to implement a system. When you're slow and you start to talk about your day and talk about things that kind of annoy you behind the bar and things that you wish you could figure out a solution to, could also be another, just like, all right, well, why don't we try this? Or ask them,
Right.
how do you think we should fix this problem?
Right.
And usually it's enough to start the conversation, and just generating ideas. And then sometimes when you're in a meeting, at the end they may say, okay, we have 10 minutes to talk about ideas, and it's open forum. What do you guys want to talk about? Open,
Right.
raise your hand. Oh my God, this is a perfect
ready.
scenario. Like, hey, transfers are killing us. We're losing so much tips from transfers to the wait staff. We need to figure this out. All of a sudden you have an open forum,
Right.
and you can start to spitball ideas and kind of go from there.
Absolutely, and I would agree with that, and I would say, just to take a really quick step back, if you have a problem that's bugging you, chances are pretty good it's bugging other people too.
Right.
But go ahead and throw it out there. Ask the question, because it's possible it's only you.
It could
And
be.
if it is only you, in a way that's a good thing, because it's going to be a problem that's easier to solve probably.
Yeah.
But the first thing you want to do is really get everybody else on board and figure out, all right, as a team, we're all having the same problem. Figure out how it's affecting everybody and get everybody frustrated. Call it out and be like, guys, isn't this really annoying? Like, that keeps happening to us. Do you know how much we're losing because of transfers? This is
Right.
crazy. And when you bring it up, everybody's gonna be like, you know what? You're absolutely right. That's crazy. We should fix that.
Yeah.
Boom, you've got consensus, you've got people on board. The other thing I really loved about what you said was, let's try this.
Right.
Not, I
This
have a
is the
solution,
solution. Right.
or I know what to do, or anything. Like, again, take that, like, be playful, be willing to try things, because you don't know what's gonna work. You might have a really good hunch, but you don't know. And so I think if you can get everybody in that meeting, everybody who you're working with, to have that conversation, say, here's our problem. Let's all talk about, like, let's really understand how it affects each of us so we understand the problem. Then let's talk about our hypotheses for how we can solve this problem. You think that this will work. I think this will work. This other person thinks this will work. What are we going to test first?
Right.
Not how are we going to solve this problem, but what are we going to test first?
Right.
And I think the other thing is agree upon what success looks like. For example,
Yeah, that's super important.
yeah, I mean, if we can go an entire week without missing a transfer, that's a win. Mm-hmm. All right, that's what success looks like. Now let's try each of those ideas. Let's try the first idea and see if it works. And if it works, fantastic, we're done here.
Right.
It's just a hypothesis for testing. And then, and the beautiful thing is, once you fixed one problem with the system and you've actually done it once,
It gains momentum.
it gains a ton of momentum.
Yeah.
And everybody starts thinking that way. I'd be like, you know what, while we're at it, you know what else drives me crazy?
I run out of a specific mixer halfway through a shift. Cool, let's look at that. Let's figure out a way to solve this
How
solution.
can we solve that problem
Yeah.
proactively? Absolutely. And I think it also gets people really, really excited about the team.
Yeah.
I mean, it brings the team together. It really is sort of uplifts the entire bar staff, gets everybody a little bit more engaged and excited. It's just a good thing. This gets
Yeah.
me excited. I'm excited for you.
And I think you're always going to have people on the outside, people that aren't fully engaged, and they're going to frown or make snarky comments, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But if the system works, that's the true test.
Right.
If it improves your day-to-day life, if it makes you more money, it makes you more faster, more accurate, or delivers a better customer experience at the end of the day, these are all hallmarks of a good system.
It's hard to deny that.
Right,
no
exactly.
No matter how negative of a person you might be, it's a little bit hard to deny the fact that you just got more tips.
Right, exactly. And when other bartenders start to see that, they're like, okay, cool. What are you doing again? What'd you do? Let's break that down for me. And you're like, remember in our meeting, you don't have to do that, but you can always say,
Don't do that.
like, hey, this is what we've been trying. It's been working for us.
Again,
this
trying.
is how you do it.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Because
Well, I think the key here, sorry to speak over you, the key here is really be careful not to act like a boss.
Right.
It's not going to work. You aren't the boss. If you are the boss, then keep listening. That's the next session.
Right.
But the challenge here is all you're doing is trying to influence your peers for a mutual goal. And by really taking that language of, like, let's try this. What's your idea? Like, hypotheses, testing your ideas and just going with what's actually working, you get so much more buy-in
Right.
without people being like, okay, here's Bossy Joe again.
Right, and I think it's really important to not act like you have skin in the game. Don't try to influence people and try to sway them on your opinion,
Yeah.
even if it may be your idea, and don't put a lot of weight behind it. It's really important to listen to everybody.
It's equal weight as everybody else.
Right, exactly.
Everybody's got good ideas.
So this is where collaboration becomes a thing, and it really takes on its own kind of personality, and it makes its way through the bar team as a whole.
Yeah.
So it's really important not to push your agenda or your ideas
Right.
on the group. Just one more thing
And
to test.
it is worthwhile. I mean, depending on the situation, if you're talking about something small, then not a big deal, but it is worthwhile to speak with your manager as well.
Right.
Bring them in so they're a witness to the conversation. If it's at your meeting, then they're probably there anyway, but just so they're not blindsided by, like, wait, why are we doing this?
Right.
You're doing what? Excuse me?
I mean, good for you, but I feel like it should have been part of this conversation.
Or also, like, there's some good reason why that's not going to work that you wouldn't know
that you
about.
would know about.
So
Yeah.
it's good to have them as a part of the conversation, and by having them, it also helps. It helps remind you that you're not the boss.
Right.
It's easy to feel like this was my idea. I'm going to own the process. I'm going to take credit for it, and so on and so forth. And frankly, it probably was your idea to fix the problem, and that's awesome. But letting that go is going to really drastically increase the probability of success. So it sucks, but, like, let it go.
Well, that, and also if somebody contributed to the overall process, make sure you call it out. Like,
Yeah.
hey, this was Tom's idea. He did a really good job. This is, we came to a really great solution. Good job, Tom.
Yeah.
The more light you can shine on other people, the more it's a natural leadership trait to put other people's in the spotlight and, just make things happen. This is a good way to kind of build that steam.
And it will pay off. This is hugely fantastic experience for you as a leader. Even if you're not in a formal leadership position, this kind of experience will pay off.
Absolutely.
I think they call it, what do they call it? Like influence without authority. There's a book on that or something. I know, it sounds good,
fancy.
doesn't it? Fancy. But it is a powerful skill to have.
Absolutely.
So think of it as a personal development situation.
A challenge, if you will.
I will. I will. And the key benefit here is exactly what you touched upon in, I think, the last section, which is a team that has really great systems is a team that doesn't have to waste a lot of time explaining things to each other.
Yeah.
It's a team that can be 4 deep in the weeds and just completely
Rock it.
silent, just rocking it out, and things are just happening, and somebody on the outside is like,
you guys are ridiculous.
it's magic. It's like, how are they telepathic? I don't understand. This happened, and then he just knew to go in there. And
right.
We've all seen bar teams like that.
Yeah.
Right? Is
it's
that
impressive.
not super inspiring?
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing, and I think that it's something we can all aspire to be.
So now we're on to the third part, I guess the last part.
I hope so. I didn't plan anything else. So
Surprise! So this is kind of our last focus, and that is if you are a bar manager or if you're a bar leader, how does this help you? How do you do this? And I think it's one of those things that when you're beginning as a bar manager, this is a really big thing to develop in yourself. The ability to develop systems and delegate. Julia touched upon this in the very beginning, is systems are a prerequisite for delegation.
Yeah.
So building these systems, understanding how these systems work, and then being able to hand these systems or processes off to somebody else to do is a significant portion of what it means to be a bar leader or bar manager.
I would agree with that. I think it's very tempting as a manager, especially a new manager, to look at something, try to give it to somebody else. It doesn't go well, and you say, forget it. I'll do it. I'll just do it myself.
Right, because you're focusing on the skill set you already have as a bartender. You're like, I can do these things. I'm really good at it.
I know how to do it. I can do it so fast.
Right, exactly. But that's not your job. That's not the job you were hired to do anymore.
Yeah.
Your job is to promote your bar team and to build a team and build a team of leaders. And this is how you do it. By delegating, by building systems, by getting input. These are all ways that this is what you've been hired to do, is to lead your team.
And by doing it yourself, you're also doing them a disservice.
Right.
Because your bar team doesn't get to learn how to do it.
Exactly.
And by the way, somebody taught you.
Right, absolutely.
Somebody wanted to do it themselves, but they took the time to teach you how to do it.
Right,
and
exactly.
so it's really kind of a pay it forward thing, but again, it's not your job. That's like kind of the short and long of it, right?
Right.
The fact of the matter is that as a manager in a leadership position, your role is, again, it's around leading your team. It's not about going and doing the thing.
Yeah, and I think one of the best quotes I got from one of my mentors early on was, as a manager, you are trying to train your replacement.
I like that.
And after that, I was like, okay, I get it. So let's talk about kind of the process of building systems as a manager or as an owner, and you're going to hand this off as a delegation. So the first thing to do is identify the task, right? And perform it and understand it to the nth degree, like really understand what task you're going to do.
You probably are already decent at this.
Probably.
I can't imagine you're going to get hired as a manager if you don't know how to do your job.
Right.
So you're probably okay at this.
Right. And the second step, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you're the queen of systematizing and processes.
Systemizing?
Systemating. Developing systems and implementation.
Systemification. Oh, I like that. I'm going to go with that.
I like it. But the second step is to document this process of how to repeat this, how to hand this off to somebody. And it could be either in written form, if you are a really good writer. If you're not,
you don't have to be
video.
I would say you don't even have to be a good writer. This is not Shakespeare.
Right. It's bullet points.
How to do a thing.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and be gentle with yourself. Throw it in a Google Doc. I don't know. Like, it doesn't don't get hung up on being a good writer.
Right. But, documentation could be as simple as holding up an iPhone, videoing yourself doing this process. These are the tips, these are the tricks, this is how to get the thing done.
I highly recommend that approach because unless it's something like how to update the spreadsheet, which may not make so much sense,
Right.
but like a lot of the stuff we do behind the bar is very physical, and describing it in bullet points isn't going to do it justice.
Right.
Plus, goodness knows it's a heck of a lot faster just to do a video.
It is.
And your phone is way more than good enough to get the quality you need for this thing to be documented. Put it on Google Drive, share it with your staff with a link. Done.
Absolutely.
Don't get hung up on your documentation being absolutely perfect with a great production quality, and you've got lighting and you've got camera and oh no.
Oh, look, an extra. Susie's here, my regular. Well, you don't need all that.
You
Just
don't need
get
it.
to the meat of it and
Get
then
it
kind of
written
go. Go. So the third part of this process is to train people on the task. Hopefully they've seen the beautiful video that you created, or read that
Or
Shakespearean documentation.
Your bulleted list.
So they kind of have an idea of how to do this process. But it's really important that you hand this off and let them do it. Being able to get hands-on, to break the process.
Yeah. They will break it, and that's good because it's going to show the holes in your documentation.
Right. And for them to understand how to problem solve this process, whatever it is really super important for them to feel confident about it and to own it.
Yeah, don't micromanage wherever possible. I would say that ideally you sort of walk them through it the first time, maybe do it yourself and alongside them, work together, whatever. It really depends on the process on whether this is going to make sense, and then let them do it hands off the next time. And what your job is just to check what happened afterwards.
Right.
Check their work, make sure it was done correctly, and to be there to answer any questions.
Which is a perfect segue into number 4, which is exactly what she just said, and that is monitoring the process to make sure it's done correctly.
I jumped the gun a little
Yeah,
bit. I get so
it's
excited.
perfect. It's so good.
So excited.
Yeah, the process queen here. But that's really important, just to make sure you don't want to hand it off and just like walk away
Forget
and
about it.
let them just kind of go willy-nilly on it.
Eventually, yes.
Eventually, that's the
You
goal.
want to trust your team, but at least in the beginning and at some varying degree of frequency, double check things are going right.
Right, exactly. And this could be just going in, make sure the syrup is done correctly, or making sure that the close down procedure is done correctly. Whatever it is, just make sure that in the first beginning stages of handing this off and training, that monitoring is a big portion of it for you.
Absolutely, yeah.
So the last thing is to look for ways to improve this process. Ask them for their input, like, hey, what happened?
Yeah.
What are some things, some suggestions on how this process can be improved?
You've done it 5 times now. What do you think?
You know it better than I do.
Right.
Yeah.
How can we make this better?
Right.
A key component of this is also keeping your documentation updated. The person doing the task should be in charge of updating the documentation.
Right.
And yeah, they might have to record the video again. That's okay.
That's okay.
Because it's an easy little video. It's only 5 minutes, right? Right? We didn't take it too seriously.
The lighting, the extras,
We talked
the
about
sound.
If it's a Google Doc, even better. I mean, that's something that's going to be really easy to update.
Right.
But again, it's important to always keep an eye on these things because things change. People change, processes change, situations change, circumstances. And what you're going to want to do is keep that process updated and keep the documentation updated. Because guess what? People quit.
Yeah.
People leave.
Yeah, absolutely.
People
you need to train new people.
Right. No call, no show on the day that it has to be done.
Vacations. Yeah. So
Vacations.
that's funny. Yeah.
That was a good one.
But it's really important to have all these processes down, so that way, if you need to hand them off, it's easy to do. So
what are some examples?
there's a ton of examples that we could cover, and I'm sure everybody probably has seen them or knows them. But basically, if it lives on a checklist, it's probably a procedure that has been created to make your life easier.
And if it doesn't live on a checklist, it should probably be on a checklist.
Probably, yeah. So opening, closing procedures. This is huge. Just to get everybody in the same mindset of this is how we set our bar up every single day. That's big.
Yeah.
Because one bartender may not want to open every single day.
Yeah.
They shouldn't. But they should have a uniform set of things they do to set a bar up. So that way, when bartender number 2 walks in a door, it all looks the same.
When he calls in sick, and you need somebody else to cover for
Right,
you.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Close down procedures, obviously the same thing.
Same thing.
You know, break everything down as a team. Everything goes in the same place. We clean the same. We break everything down. Everything lives in a very specific place. Really important. Running side work is another one. Because you're not going to be busy all the time. You need to replenish your supplies. What do you do during your shift to make all these things happen?
Right.
There's so many different things that we
You
can
kind of
do.
touched upon mise en place setup. Again, that might be something that is a good opportunity for a video or a photograph.
Right.
Just top-down photograph of the bar.
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
this goes here, this goes here.
Paste
this
it
goes
right inside one of the cabinets that
Yep.
you never open.
Done. Done.
Yeah, but ordering alcohol, inventory, equipment maintenance. This is really big.
That's a good one.
I think this is something that gets overlooked, but it's really important if you want your stuff to keep running.
Nah.
Like,
I don't need my fridge to work.
why is my fridge so hot when I stand up next to it? It's probably because you haven't cleaned your filters and the motor's straining and it's generating all this heat and it's going to break down in another month if you don't clean it.
And there goes your vermouth.
Well, and it's super hot behind a bar.
That's true. That's a good point, actually.
So these are things that, like, you create a checklist. Once a month, I clean the filters, or once a week, I clean the filters. And the machine, I break down the washing machine so it doesn't break. All these little things really do add up. Another big one that I keep harping on, and we've touched upon, is transfers. If you
Yeah.
work in a bar, or, you know, that has a restaurant attached to it, this is a big thing that can really make a difference on how much money you take home. Is making sure these checks go to the right seat without interrupting customers' experience or demanding they pay at the bar, which I know is kind of the MO usually.
It's not ideal.
But creating a really good system to make sure that you get your money, that everyone is charged correctly, can be a 6-month process. Just
Yeah.
trying to figure that out.
Definitely tough on the buy-in, too.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I think these are some great examples for sure. But yeah, I mean, across the board, as a manager, if you're not delegating, you're not being a manager, frankly. And if you are delegating, then it's really important that you take a look at your systems first. Because otherwise, again, you're going to be trying to do something differently every single time because you're relying on your memory to do a thing that you only do once a month.
Right.
So documenting it is a good way to make sure it's done exactly the same way every time, which maintains consistency, and it's also a fantastic training tool.
Yeah, and one last thing, kind of while we're on the subject of delegation and leadership and management, one thing that you want to really kind of consider and think about as you're going through this process is you don't want the buck to stop with you as the manager. It should stop with the team. This should be a team focus. All responsibility should lie with them, and then you would come in to monitor and tweak things or rattle a chain if you have to. So for me, when I was talking about close down procedures and getting buy-in and making sure all this stuff happens, one of the things that really changed for me was holding the last bartender accountable for the entire team. So that way, when they left, you're checking on the one bartender instead of everybody and having them chasing you down and signing you out for your shift or something like that. If you're a manager that's not there, and a bartender closes down, they're the person responsible. So getting one person responsible for the entire team.
And they know that they're responsible.
Right, and then the bartenders are, I'm not getting away with something, I'm letting this bartender down and he's gonna have to do it, or she's gonna have to do it, is a very different conversation than, I'm not gonna do it because they'll figure it out tomorrow or something else. So.
It's true. Being accountable to your peer is very different than being accountable to your boss.
Right, exactly. So just something else to consider as you're thinking about process and delegation.
Definitely. So I hope this podcast is giving you a new perspective for looking at your job. Whether you're showing up for your first bar backing shift or you own the whole shebang, systems are critical for keeping your bar running smoothly. And hopefully we've given you some ideas. Maybe you're driving into work right now and you're ready to
implement some new systems and consider some new things to do.
It sounds so corporate when we say
I love it! It's so good though! Systems are awesome!
So what was it? Systematization?
Systematization of things. Yes. It's great.
I'm gonna make me a t-shirt. So on the day that this podcast publishes, what we're going to do is we're going to publish a conversation in our Facebook group, which I think this is going to be around October 10th, for the record, 2018. We're going to, what I really want to do is I want to hear about other people's systems. I mean, Chris gave us some really great examples today of the systems that he used behind his bar. I want to hear yours.
Yeah, this is only one perspective, so I know there's so many better systems out there.
Absolutely.
And I am super excited about this conversation.
So let's share. Let's share notes. Go on over to our Facebook group, which you can get to by going to mixologytalk.com/group, or you can check out the show notes. I'll have a link in there too, which will be mixologytalk.com/136. And join the conversation. There's going to be a conversation in there, and we want to share notes and hear your tips and tricks as well, so we can all learn from each other.
Ooh, yeah. How about this? Best system that you've implemented in your bar? Worst system you've implemented in your bar? The train wreck
This should
system.
be good. This should be good. Hopefully we'll see you soon in that Facebook group, and otherwise we will catch you in a couple weeks.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers. Hi.
Hi there.
How's it going?
Hi, everyone. It's good to see you again.
Creepy. Surprise!
I know, right?
Whatever.
I mean, I feel like we're done. That might have been the whole episode, right? Oh, God, that's so gross.